Are you a mom looking to unlock your inner superpower and reach your highest potential? Then the Real Life Moms podcast is for you. It's about being more than just a mom. It's about living the life you desire. So click the link in the show notes and get empowered today. Hi, I'm Billy, and this is the Unlock Your Child's Full Potential podcast, where we discuss how to teach our children the lessons we wish we had learned earlier. The skills that will give them a head start in life. No one teaches you how to be a great mother, and unless you had a great mother to emulate, you have no idea what that even looks like. I believe that we all want to be the best moms and create an environment where our children can blossom into the best versions of themselves. And each of us has uncovered some part of that truth. Let's tap into the collective wisdom and inspire each other to become the moms our kids deserve us to be. Hi guys, today we have the brain engineer and coach ST Rappaport on the show, and she's going to share with us how to teach our kids to think. You know, I'm all about teaching our children skills that will give them a head start in life, and I can't think of anything more fundamental than actually teaching them how to think. I'm so excited to hear from you, ST. Please tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into the work you do.
Yes, thank you so much, Billy. I am excited, super excited to be here, especially that I work mostly with adults. It's fun to get back to talk about kids a little bit. My story started back when I was in 5th grade, and I was still struggling with the reading. I went to regular school. I had some of my siblings who were homeschooled afterwards, but I personally wasn't. And I went to a lot of reading tutors, trying to help me to read, right? And I spent a lot of time out of the classroom, and I wasn't really getting anywhere. That eventually my parents decided it's time to do something else. So they brought in what's called Feuerstein mediators, brain engineers, essentially what I do. We did no reading type of work. What we did was fun brain exercises to improve how you think. So that way everything else is easier. So literally none of the regular reading stuff. And we just did these, they looked like fun sheets and they were super fun. I loved them as an 11-year-old kid. I did it a couple of years. And not only did it help me with reading, but because it actually improved how my brain was thinking, every area got better, all over. And school got better. Socially, I did better. My confidence went up because literally my brain was now thinking in a different way. It's actually known, Feuerstein, if you Google it. It's around the globe in 40 countries. But for some reason, it's not very popular in America. Schools just don't love it, but it's super helpful. I wish more schools would be able to do it. My mom knew about it from someone else, and she brought in, literally there was no one in my town. They brought in people from other places. They flew them in to train people so that way I could get it.
Wow, amazing mom. You weren't diagnosed with dyslexia. It was just a weakness in your cognitive function.
Right. It can most definitely help people with dyslexia, ADHD, etc. It helps anyone because we all have thinking skills. I've had a lot of evaluations and things, and at that time I wasn't diagnosed with anything.
Do we all have weaknesses, weak areas? Because you talk about these 28 cognitive functions. I'm interested, what are they? And do we all have some weak and some stronger areas?
Yeah, sure. So thinking is not one big thing. We tend to think of oh, I'm thinking. But really thinking is made up of 28 thinking skills called cognitive functions, right? So I use cognitive functions and thinking skills interchangeably. Now, because there are 28, naturally we have stronger ones and weaker ones. That will depend on genetics. It will depend on your environment that you grew up in and different things. But we all, no matter who you are, no matter what you've been diagnosed with, we all can always improve all of them. You could start noticing if a child has a weak one from the age of 3, usually. Some of them only really get developed later on, but you could always work with anyone. Like I mentioned, now I work with adults and entrepreneurs, but when I started working with children, and I worked with 3-year-olds, and it really, really helps them. Why should they have to wait till then, right? They're fun where they're doing games, they're doing brain exercises. I'm if I would have gotten it when I was younger, I didn't have to wait till I was 11 to be able to read properly.
How can parents spot that weakness?
So first, we have to be aware of them. They're 28. I'm not going to read all of them to you now just because it's a lot. I could share a few of them with you if you want.
Yeah, give us example.
Yeah, I'll give you some examples. Okay, so here's a really common one. It's called clear perception. Okay, when we take in information, then we take it in a clear and organized way. So if you ever walked into a room and it was way too messy, you know you needed to clean it, you walk into your bedroom, walk into your kitchen, you're like, oh my goodness, this is so messy. I don't even want to look at this, and you just walk out of the room. That means your clear perception is not strong and you have what's called blurred perception. Or if you ever gave a child a paper to do like some sort of exercise or something, and they just don't want to do it, they're like, they get overwhelmed before they even try. They like look at the paper and they just like push it away. Probably they're experiencing, it's like too much information at the same time. Clear perception. We want to take information in a clear way. So how do we improve it? We take in information through our 5 senses. You know them. Smelling. Yeah. So essentially you want to ask yourself, go through the 5 senses and ask yourself, what do I see? So you walk into the room, I see a teddy bear, I see a blanket, I see garbage. Like, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I feel? What do I hear? Like, go through each of them. And what's happening when you say it out loud and then you like label each of them? You're literally calming your brain down and taking it in one by one. So your brain actually takes the information in a clear way, right? It doesn't get all fuzzy and blurry in your brain. Then what you do is you ask yourself, like, what's the starting point? So if I'm cleaning up a room, what's the starting point? Picking up the garbage or folding, like taking out the laundry or whatever it is, like right in the kitchen, maybe washing the dishes. You just like pick the first thing. Now, what's really cool about this is kids could do it also. Every time like your kid doesn't want to do something, instead of like being mad at them that they don't want to do it, you could just ask them, like, what's your starting point? What is the first thing they need to do? And if you use that language, the starting point, after a few times, you'll start noticing your child will start using that language. And they will start telling, if you have multiple kids, they might tell each other, they might tell you like, hey, this is my starting point. It trains their brain to develop that clear perception.
That's awesome. I like that too. What about another cognitive function that's typically a weak area? Is there something like a typically weak area, or we're all over the map?
Yeah, we are all over the map. The one commonalities that I do find is that people with similar diagnosis many times often have similar weaknesses. So let's say people with ADHD, very often they struggle with like time management, right? And a big part of that is coming from time, understanding time. There's another one, understanding reality, right? We could talk about that. Like the people with the same diagnosis, they're coming from the same sort of issues because they're same sort of skills. That's why I don't like to diagnose people. I don't like to label people. I mean, sometimes you do need it to like understand someone, but not to like put them in a box that like, hey, like now you have ADHD, so you're just always going to be hyper, or you're never going to be in time or whatever. It's a skill, and you're right now lacking that skill. As soon as you learn that skill, it's not an issue anymore. Like, I know I'm making it sound like super simple, but like, that's like essentially what it is, right? So let's say if you're struggling with time, then you train your brain's ability to understand time, and then it's a whole lot easier.
Yeah, let's do the time management thing.
Yeah. Okay. So time management actually requires multiple cognitive functions. Really, most of your day, you're not like most tasks are not just using one, they're using multiple at a time. And that's why many people struggle with time management, because if you need to use 5 or 6 different cognitive functions for time management, then if I struggle with one and you struggle with a different one, we don't need the same strategies to help us improve it. We need different solutions for each of us, right? Yeah. One of the big cognitive functions that you need for time management is literally for your brain to understand the concept of time. So this is what you're going to do. First of all, get like a big, huge calendar, okay? Like a big calendar, and hang it up in your house. Better yet, if you could like, not just for 1 month, but for 3 months or even 6 months, if possible. Put it in a place where your kids can see it. This is going to give them like the big, like what is happening. Anytime there's like a family event, you know, you're going to the park, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's like they're doing something with their friends in 3 weeks time, right? Like put it on the calendar in bigs where they will see it multiple times a day, and it will start giving their brain an understanding of time on like a bigger scale.
Okay.
That's first of all. Second of all, we want to understand time on like by minute to minute or hour to hour, or like how long a task takes. So for yourself as an adult, what you could do is, or if you have even children who are like 8 or 9 years old, what you could do with them is pick 3 or 5 tasks that you do often. And for the next week, time them. So let's say time how long it takes you to take a shower, time how long it takes you to cook dinner, whatever, something that you do very often. And keep notes like either on a paper or like in your phone, keep a notes app and just time it. So every time you took a shower, how long did it take you? One day it took you 18 minutes, one day it took you 25 minutes, right? Like just time it. This is going to help you with 2 things. First of all, many times we think tasks take either longer or shorter than what they actually do. So you think like, hey, like I need to run out the house now, I'll quickly take a shower, but you think it's only going to take 10 minutes, but it really takes 20 minutes. Now you have it like in black and white, right? Like how long it really takes you. Yeah. Or like, I know like such a mom one, like, I'm just going to put in a load of laundry before I run out to pick up my kids. Like, right. And then like, that is the thing that makes you late because you decided like you're already in, you decided to like put in something.
Or like you put 10 tasks for today and you have no chance of completing them all.
Exactly. Right. So like now, you know, like, is it reasonable? Like, does it actually make sense? Like that you'll be able to do those tasks or not? And some tasks, we also have it on the flip, right? Like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, it's going to take me an hour to do it. It really only takes you 20 minutes. So like, no excuses now, right? Like you actually know what, but it makes it easier for your brain. That's first of all. Second of all, it starts giving your brain a sense of like how long a minute is or how long 20 minutes is. So your brain is now understanding time. So that's why you want to do it with your kids also, right? That's why I'm sure like you've heard of like telling kids like 5 more minutes left to play because they know like to get ready to clean, which is true. But if you could put like a 5-minute timer, then they could see it as like a minute thing, right? And you want to make sure you're not doing this with like punishments or stuff. That's a whole conversation. Like I'm not into punishments at all, like only like positive reinforcement type of things. You don't want them to have like a negative association with it. It's like a neutral thing. Like this is, or like you're driving somewhere, let's time how long it's going to take us to get from here to the grocery store, right? Like just for your brain to be able to see this is how long it is going to take in.
You know what a typical mistake I've made and I see people make? You tell the kids we have 5 more minutes and we leave the park. And then you give them actually 10 and they get confused because 5 minutes is never the same amount of time.
Yeah, that's like such a good example. Yes, exactly. And then it's all mushy. That's why in the beginning I said, right, like cognitive functions weak and strong could either be genetics or could be your environment. And that is a really good example of
so you think we can weaken the functions through our daily lives?
I don't like to focus on it. I really like to focus on like the strengthening part, but most definitely they could be weakened if a person has trauma. That's like for sure, because emotions are very related to it. I'll tell you what, this is how I like to say it. A child learns a lot from their parents' behaviors, right? Now, let's say a child had a really good, going back to clear perception, just because we already spoke about it, okay? But they are naturally born with really good clear perception and they could take in information in a clear and organized way. Now, if they keep on seeing their mother every time walk into a messy thing and just like, even if it's not a big deal, but just like make a comment, like mutter under her breath, oh no, this is like way too messy, or like, I don't know where to start or whatever, kids pick these things up and it goes into the brain. And what happens? Their brain starts developing whenever there's so much information, I'm not interested in this. And it literally weakens that skill versus when they see you as a mother just saying, hey, like, what's the starting point? They're going to doing the same thing. So not to focus, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Modeling the right behavior is always important. How do we enhance their cognitive functions? Are there some specific exercises? You mentioned already some of them. Please tell me more.
Yes. The very, very best thing you can do for your child, like literally the best gift you could give to them, is to teach them how to think through mediation. What's mediation? Mediation is essentially asking them questions instead of telling them. I know this is not possible, like always, as like a mom, like you're always busy, there's always things to do. But as much as possible, set yourself some sort of goal, maybe like 5 questions a day or 5 minutes a day or whatever is reasonable for you.
I love that.
Instead of telling your child, you ask them. So let's say you're about to go outside. Okay, now it's the summer, so it's not a really good example. But let's say it's the winter now, and then you're about to go outside and you want your child to put on their coat. So instead of telling them, put on your coat, you could ask them, we're going outside now. What do you think you need to do? This is going to turn them from passive to active. Their brain is not just going into passive mode, but it actually has to work to figure it out. It goes on like way more when they're older, 100%. Like never do their work for them. Always ask them questions to help them figure it out. Even if like you're giving them tasks around the house, don't just tell them how to do that. Ask them how they think this is going to be the best way. And then you can have conversations about it. I'm not saying like the child's running the show, but the point is that you're asking them the questions to help their brain be able to think.
Yeah, because they're so eager to get the right answer right away. My kids ask me, what should I eat? How should I dress up today? Maybe.
Yeah, like those are really good examples. Like, what do you think you should eat? Or what are you in the mood of? Or what should I wear? Also, like, right, they're asking you. And if you could like throw back a question at them, you are training their brain to think. And it's going to start with like those simple things with like eating and dressing. And when they have challenges, this is like where the real gold is, because when they have challenges, instead of becoming stuck and like just giving up, like so much people do, like even as adults, they don't know what to do. They all have the ability to ask themselves questions to help them come out. That's the point eventually, is that they should be asking their own questions to themselves. They're like, hey, what should I do here? I have like 3 power questions, I like to call them, that you could ask yourself or your child whenever there's like a challenging situation. So the first one is, what do I see? Just ask yourself, what do I see? This is like a bit working on that clear perception of helping the brain get in all the information. So let's say whether it's cleaning a room or whether it's doing some sort of math example, whatever the challenge is, what do I see? Then it is, what is the problem here? Get super, super clear on what's the problem here. Because so many times we take action, but we're not actually solving the problem because we didn't take the time to think about it. That's another cognitive function.
So true.
Right? So like, what's the problem here? And then once you ask that question, the third question is, what's the strategy? Or another word for that is, what's my plan moving forward? Like, how am I going to solve this? Now you have what you need to be able to move forward. So this is both for you and for your child. If you could help them, like train them into that, then you're like literally giving them what they need to be able to be successful in life.
I love those questions. Getting in the habit of just asking yourself the right questions.
Yeah. So like I said, one thing is like it gets them to think, but like it really turns them from like passive to active. Because like so much times like we're giving them information. Sometimes they literally don't understand us. And then like we just get mad at them, but it's like they literally weren't understanding what you're saying. Most times, hopefully they do understand us, but it's just like whatever, like mom said this, so they're very in passive mode. When you're asking them questions and it's something that they've never thought of before, they have to make new neuron connections in their brain and go down a different path. Like you're literally growing the brain for them.
Okay, I'm hopping in for just a minute to tell you about the free resource I recently created. It's called the Connection Blueprint, and it consists of 5 tools that will help you improve the relationship with your child and create an environment where your kid feels seen, heard, and loved. After all the lessons we want to teach our kids require us to first have a trusting relationship with them, so that they're ready to hear our advice and lean on our support. Anytime I feel disconnected and out of sync with my own children, I get back to this blueprint, put the tools to practice, and it works wonders. I'm sure having a loving and trusting relationship with your kids is a top priority for you too. So check the show notes and get your copy of the Connection Blueprint. The examples were very interesting. Can you give me more examples of the 28 thinking skills?
Of course. Another one of my favorites. It's comparison. Now, most of the time we compare things, but we don't compare them correctly. We're going to a store, we want to buy a new thing, and we say, okay, one is cheaper and one is higher quality. Like, which one do I want to buy? Do I want to buy the cheaper one or do I want to buy the higher quality one? The problem is that you're not comparing them on the same level. One is talking about price and one is talking about quality. What you need to do is when you're comparing, you need to compare on the same level. So you say I have A and B. What is the price for A and B? What is the quality for A and B? And then what is more important for me? In this situation, is price or quality? And then you get to make your decisions much, much faster. Comparisons is one of the foundations to many of the higher order thinking, abstract thinking, being able to categorize, being able to like organize a lot of these type of things. We need to be able to compare correctly. So with your child, you could do the same thing. You could take random items in your house, so an apple and orange, or a pen and a pencil, and just teach your child either the word parameters or of levels, of like comparing them on the same level. So color would be the level. One is orange, one is blue. Use would be another level, or is it erasable would be another level. In the beginning, it might be a little bit of a challenge, but it's really going to help them develop that thinking skill. And once you see they're getting really good at it, you could add a third one or a fourth one, and they could like compare multiple things. And if your kids are even older, you could show them like how you're comparing like decisions, like business decisions. We're going on a family trip. These are all our options, right? And like we're comparing, does this make more sense? That makes more sense. This is closer. This is further. This is more expensive, right? And all that.
Yeah, amazing.
Should we do another one?
Yeah, we should. It's awesome.
Okay. So another one is categorizations. Categorizations is also super important. You need to be able to be good at comparisons before categorization. So if you're working with your child on it, start with comparisons. But once you think they're pretty good at it, you go into categorizations. It's really, really important for organizing. So categorization works two ways. It's about taking like a big group of items and splitting it into little groups, right? So let's have a big bag of marbles and I'm splitting it into multiple groups. Or it could be I have multiple small groups and I'm putting it together in a big group. Okay.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing with categorizations. You could categorize, you could make one group and split it into many, many different ways, right? So if I have a bag of marbles, I could split them by size, I could split them by color, I could split them by different textures. This is what you could do with your kids. Take like toys, a really good example, like take toys.
Yeah, it's a favorite game, actually. Splitting the Lego parts. Yeah.
Exactly, splitting them. So what they could do, if they've always been splitting them by color, or maybe your children always split them by size or whatever it is, right? Now have them put them all back into a big group, find a new way for them to be able to split it. So they could see that you could take the same thing and split it into different ways.
Okay.
Now you could take this the opposite way, which is a little bit more challenging. Your kids might need to be a little bit older for this, like more like 5 even. Like, I don't know if I would do this for younger than 5. Not that you can't try, but I'm saying like, don't be frustrated if your kid younger than 5 can't do it. But you take a bunch of random items. So now you take a bunch of different toys. Each toy almost is like its own group. We have a piece of Lego, a piece of blocks, a piece of marbles, whatever, a piece of animals. And now they have to make these groups. They have to make 3 groups, take all the toys and only put them into 3 groups. How are they going to figure out how to put these 3 into 3 groups?
Interesting.
Yes, right? Like you really have to think, how are you going to split these things in a way that it makes sense? And you can't just be, oh, like there's no place for it, so I'm just putting it in a group. This is going back to parameters and the levels that we were talking about by comparisons. You have to make sure that your levels for each one of the groups are like on the same level. If you decide, you know what, I'm splitting them all by size, big, medium, and small, then they're all on the same level. You can say like, okay, I am taking all the toys that are big in one group, I'm taking all the toys that are blue in another group, and I'm taking all the fluffy toys in another group, right? Like texture. You have to split them all on the same level. This is the basic concept of the exercise, but like you could change the rules of like how you do it for your kid to really, really get better at it.
I'm starting to understand some of the exercises in their textbooks. 2 of my girls are in school already. So they have these, tell us which item doesn't belong to that group.
Here's the thing though, in school, they're really good at like trying to get you to get the right answer. When we're doing it with our kids, we don't really care. Obviously, we want them to get the answer, but it's more about how they're thinking about it, right? Like if they understand how to make those groups, then they could understand how to make groups anywhere in their life. Most people, when they organize a cabinet or a closet or something, they don't really organize it. All they're doing is they're making it neat. Again, they're taking the same things and they're just making it neater. What you really need to do is take everything out and reorganize it in the way that makes the most sense. Like actually say like, this used to be on the second shelf, but if I almost never use it, so I could put it high up. Right? Like you're reorganizing it completely instead of just like making it really neat.
Wow, it makes sense. The ability to make the system, actually, to understand the system.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Obviously, we want to get the answer, but the point is not the answer. It's the ability of understanding it. So that way we can do it anytime.
What about creative thinking? Can we enhance that thinking skill?
Creative thinking, surprisingly, it comes from the cognitive function, from the thinking skill of hypothetical thinking, which is essentially if and then. If I know this, then that. Now, if we think of it, nothing is really new. Everything comes from something else. So that's where if and then hypothetical, like creative thinking comes. Like if I know this, then I know that. So let's say if last time I built something with Lego and it was very tall and it fell down, and this time I want to make something taller without it falling down, then I need to do what? So if you could use the phrase if and then with your child, if I know this, like use that as the question, then what? Then you'll really develop their creative thinking. The second thing you could do is have them draw or do stuff with their non-dominant hand. So that means their hand that they don't usually use to write with. So if they're righty, then it's their left hand. If they're lefty, if they're righty. Not like enforcing them, but what happens is when you draw with the other hand, you're going down new pathways that you don't usually use. You get to your amygdala and a bunch of science there, but you end up being creative. It doesn't have to look pretty. The point is the process of it, right? Like you don't need the answer. So if your kids are just drawing, like it doesn't have to look like a pretty picture. It could literally be a scribble, but it's going to help them get there. If your kids are older and they could write, this is super helpful, even for adults, is they can have a conversation between their two hands. So the hand that you usually use to write with asks the questions, and the hands that you don't usually use to write with answers without thinking. And this is where the creative part's going to come in. So you ask the question and you answer with your non-dominant hand. Ask the question with the hand you usually write with, and you answer with your non-dominant hand. And you end up like having a conversation between more of like your logical brain and your creative brain.
Do you write the answer?
Left hand writes the answer, but it doesn't really think, it just writes.
Okay.
And that way it's coming like more from the creative part of the brain, because as soon as you're going to start thinking about it, you're going more back into the logical. It's going to be messy. It's going to look like a child wrote it. Even better if you could do it on a paper that doesn't have lines, because like, again, it's trying to get back into the creative part. Take 2 markers or 2 crayons, 1 in each hand, and just ask the question and write without thinking. Ask the question, write without thinking.
I love it. Awesome exercises. I can't wait to put them to practice.
Yeah, you could also do that. Just one last thing real quick. If a child's really angry or like stressed, as like a way to calm them down, you could give them like either Play-Doh or crayons or stuff to scribble with their non-dominant hand, and it releases the emotions really quickly. So you could make it like a habit in your house that whenever someone's angry, instead of like hitting another person, they have crayons and markers and they could just scribble with their other hand, and it will really help them calm down.
We've been in the habit of taking a deep breath and going into the other room, but I love the drawing part too. You give them something to do, an outlet for all that energy.
It releases all the anger. But yeah, like really good. Like they take a deep breath, is like helps them that calm down and then like release that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Did we cover the most important of those 28 functions?
Not really most important 28, because we all have different ones. I do have like an assessment you could take. It's more geared for adults, but you could take it and like be smart and like do it for your child. I also put a bunch of like free content on like YouTube about these 28 cognitive functions, like on podcasts, like all these places. And I'm always like happy to answer questions. If you ever have any questions, drop on any of my channels and stuff. And like, I really try to answer. So even though I work only with entrepreneurs, a lot of the content is for like anyone and children also.
Yeah, please tell us about the podcast and the program.
So the podcast is called The Business Brain. That is a little bit more business oriented, but YouTube and TikTok, Instagram is Life Picks University, PIX, Life Picks University. My website's Life Picks University. To get to like the assessment would be lifepicksuniversity.com/brain.
Awesome. You go from that, learn where your weaknesses are and find the right exercises to improve that area.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for this amazing information. That's so much that we can do to improve and make our brains more effective.
Thank you so much for having me, Billy. It's fun. ST gave us so many great tools to help enhance our children's thinking skills.
I wanted to repeat them all here once again, so it's easier for you to write them down if you want, and try these exercises with your kids. It sounds like so much fun. Thinking skill number 1, clear perception. When your kids get overwhelmed before they start a task, like tidying up their toys, for example, their brains might be bombarded by too much information. To help them calm their brains, teach them to go through their 5 senses and ask themselves, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? And etc. Then once they get the information in a clearer way, teach them to ask themselves the question, what is my starting point? What is the first thing I need to do? In the case of cleaning their room, that might be picking up the toys from the floor. Thinking skill number 2, time awareness. To help your kids understand time on a bigger scale, hang a big calendar on the wall, preferably for a few months, not just one, and mark their appointments. To get them to understand time minute to minute and learn to manage their daily schedule, pick 3 to 5 tasks you do often and time them. Do it for a week and keep notes. Now your kids know how much time it takes them to get ready for school in the morning, for example, and can learn to plan ahead. Thinking skill number 3, comparing. Teach your child to compare items on the same level, color, size, texture. Smaller kids could be engaged in comparing pencil with a pen. Older ones could be included in selecting a family trip destination. Thinking skill number 4, categorization. This skill comes after the kid has mastered comparisons. It works 2 ways, splitting a bag of Lego blocks in smaller groups according to one parameter, be it color, size, or else, but it has to be on the same level. The other and more complicated way is to take a bunch of random items and have the child put them in 3 groups, choosing the level by which they are categorizing the items. What's important here is to teach them how to make groups and understand the logic behind it. ST says that the best gift to give your child is to teach them to think through mediation. That essentially is asking them questions instead of telling them what to do. For example, instead of telling them go brush your teeth, you can ask, what else do you need to do before going to bed? This is going to turn their brain from passive to active mode. When your child asks you a question like, what should I wear today? Throw back a question at them. Don't give them a straight answer. You're training their brain to think. So when they grow up and face challenges, they'll be in the habit of asking themselves questions to figure it out instead of giving up. The 3 power questions you can train them to use are, what do I see? What is the problem here? What is my plan moving forward? Lastly, some exercises that will help your children be more creative are having them write and draw with their non-dominant hand and teaching them to use this phrase, if I know this, then what? Thank you so much for listening and letting me be a part of your day. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, please share it with a friend and help me reach more moms around the world. Also, if you find some value in this podcast and would like to help support it, please visit my Ko-fi page. The link is in the show notes. Any contribution is much appreciated. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe so you get notified when a new episode drops. I'll see you next week.